Paul Simon, the legendary American musician and songwriter, wrote a song with the title Old Friends back in the late 1960s with some memorable lyrics about the onset of old age. But to be fair to everyone mentioned in this short tale about old friends, all have walked through the door marked 70-some years ago and therefore old by some conventions. But I mean old as in long time, and more importantly, not one of these people could remotely be regarded as old as, in Mr. Simon's words, lost in their overcoats, waiting for the sunset, in terms of their demeanour, their outlook or their attitude, and that's quite an achievement in itself. They're all feisty, opinionated and great fun to be with. People aged around 70 in 2024 seem quite different from those Paul Simon wrote about in the 60s. Can you imagine us years from today sharing a park bench quietly? How terribly strange to be 70. That sounds more like 80 plus these days, so that's all good. Those who are following this series will know that my family left its Sheffield area roots back at the end of the 1980s to move even further north, and by doing so we estranged ourselves from a regular social group which has been strong since post-school days. This is the Sheffield group. I spent much of my teenage years at school in Worcestershire. My parents invested in this on the basis that it could give me a better chance in life than going to a local school. They may also have wanted me out of the way during my years of teenage angst, but it's too late to ask them now. Anyway, the experience didn't scar me for life, and many friendships ensued whilst away from home. One result of these is the Malvern Group. So I have both the Sheffield Group and the Malvern Group. And in the case of both groups, and to quote Paul Simon for the last time, we talked about some old times and drank ourselves some beers. And to the huge delight of all, we do seem to lean on old familiar ways. Paul Simon got it just right there, didn't he? There are basic differences between these two groups. The Sheffield group comprises 4 couples who have known each other since the 1960s, all having been married, as was the tradition, in the early 70s, whilst still in our early 20s. We all have children, 11 between us, and grandchildren, 25 and counting. Blimey. All are still married to the same partners and have stayed in the Sheffield area with the exception of Sue and I. We visit the area for holidays from time to time and put out an All Points message for a get-together. Historically, this has taken place at the Miners' Arms in Eyam, the scene of much alcohol-fuelled revelry back in the day when every Friday night was a lock-in before we got back into our cars for over-the-limit drives back into Sheffield. How we survived those experiences is a miracle. The last 2 meetings we've had have been at the Scotsman's Pack in Hathersage, a convenient crawl away from the holiday cottages we had rented whilst down there. Interestingly, only 1 of the 8 people went to university straight from school, although 2 went to Polytechnic and 1 has gained an Open University qualification later in life. The group all come from the right side of the city, 1 via White Africa, and some went to private school, yet the pull of university wasn't strong. To a man and a woman, all have succeeded in life, being no different in these areas than those in the Malvern Group. Now, the Malvern Group's roots reach as far back as 1963, when the members were all eager 13-year-olds living and learning with each other for 5 school years. We all went our separate ways at the end of the 1960s until, I guess, about 25 years ago, when one of the group, Graham, found me via the Friends Reunited website, and this resulted in some very social meetings in London. By 2009, the core members had increased to 4, and we had the first face-to-face reunion in 2009, and we've had many more since. Conversation, good food is taken and the drink flows, and we've continued after the enforced lockdown interruptions. This is where Zoom came in, and now we have regular on-screen meetings, albeit only 40 minutes at a time, and with only minimal alcohol at our fingertips. This group has now increased to a hardcore of 6, with an additional brother from the past logging in from Cape Town when he can. Truly international, and we now meet up once a year in the old town for a boys' night away, including a visit to the pub in which we are all shareholders, for old time's sake, of course. All of the Malvern group, bar one, which was me, went to university and have had glittering careers on the back of it. Whether their lives have turned out any better than the Sheffield group is not up for debate. But what is undeniable is that everyone has arrived at the same point in their later lives with smiles on their faces and much experience and bonhomie to share. I love the vibe and the synergy of both groups, and if anyone hasn't tried this with their own circle of old friends, I thoroughly recommend it as one of life's great diversions, coming full circle as it does on lifelong relationships and friendships. But, most importantly from my perspective, both these groups of lovely people help me make sense of my life cycle, being a strand that runs through. They provide continuity by having been there when I was younger and gauche and making mistakes, and being there again when I might even have grown up a little. But no one judges anyone, no one scores points, and everyone takes everyone else for exactly who they are. And everyone will remember why we were friends all those years ago and why we still are. The river runs deep, even though it runs swiftly.